How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video, and today, guys, what we're going to do is Splight. Now, Splight is really causing a ruckus over in the OCG, and so that's causing a lot of people in the TCG to ask, like, hey, is this deck going to be tier 0 when it reaches the TCG at the end of the year? And I really don't think so. Today, we're going to be discussing why. We're going to be discussing what the cards do, my final list after multiple hours of testing and moving into that format, at least for right now, right? Because the format could be completely different, which I'm sure it will be. And we're also going to be going over some technical play tips that you can use when you are going to go ahead and play this deck that will be helpful down the line. So if you haven't already checked out the Imperium Duel store, definitely go over there and check it out. There's a lot of cool items over there, and don't forget to use code GGYGO10, and we'll hop right on into our first Splight card here. So the first thing that I want to cover is going to be our main deck searchers. So the first one's going to be on our left called Blue. The one on the right is called Jet. So the one on the left is a free special summon that goes ahead and searches a monster, which is really nice, as the Jet searches a spell or a trap. And so what's really cool here is that you can go ahead and kind of just add each other at that point, because you can do Jet add starter special summon the Blue can then add another one, or you can go Blue special Jet, get starter special out like Red. So it's really nice that you can kind of just like basically get 3 monsters out of one of these, which is why the deck is so explosive, right? It's really nice. So this is something that is just kind of really broken for the deck. But there's also these as well, which are your main deck Negates. So on the left we have Carrot, on the right we have Red. So what's really cool about these in particular is that you can go ahead and tribute off a level 2, and then you can go ahead and negate the effect of a spell or trap, or on the right you can negate a monster. But if you tribute off a link 2 or a rank 2, you can go ahead and destroy it instead. Now, even if you do tribute off a link or a rank 2, you don't have to destroy the monster. That's completely optional, which will come up, and I think that that's really cool that they didn't make it mandatory to have to destroy the monster. It's an option. So that's another reason why I think that these are just so strong, alongside the fact that they don't even negate the activation. So it plays a lot like an Ash, which again, I think is very strong. So the next thing here is going to be the extract monsters. On the left we have Elf, on the right we have Gigantic. So Elf is really cool because it points down left and down right. What's neat about this though is it works a lot like Cherubini. Whatever it points to cannot be targeted, instead of Cherubini where they can't be destroyed. So this is essentially the new Cherubini, right? It also allows you to quick effect special summon a level 2 from your graveyard. If your opponent controls a monster, you can go ahead and special summon out a rank 2 or a link 2, which is why Toad spam is so good with this deck, because you can keep bringing back the Toad, which is usually really strong, right? So for a Gigantic on the right is really cool because you don't even have to detach one from itself. You can go ahead and detach one from another Xyz monster, which is also very strong. It doesn't come up a ton, but it's something that we really can consider, because I think this is a really, really nice thing to just kind of know. The other thing though is that you want to make sure that you have like Red on the board already, because if you use this effect to detach one in special level 2 from the deck, it doesn't detach for cost. So if they ogre it, you can no longer get the effect. It resolves without effect and it gets destroyed. So it's really cool though, because when you resolve this effect, your opponent and you cannot special summon anything except level 2, rank 2, link 2. So at that point, no Nibirus can hit the board at all, which is pretty crazy that they added that in here, but it's just a in-archetype Nibiru defense. Moving forward off of this though, again, there is some technical play that if you have the ability to put a Red on the board before you use the Gigantic, make sure that you do, so you do not lose to an Ogre. The other thing is going to be making sure that you play around the Imperms and the Veilers by making sure that you're utilizing the arrows underneath the Elf. This is really important because Imperm and Veiler are going to be very popular. The only one that you really have to still be worried about, of course, is going to be like Gamma. This does help you in that situation as well, but you have to realize that this card only negates the effect, so it would still be live in hand. So that's something where, of course, Gamma is going to be really strong in this matchup, where if you look at the OCG, they only have 1 Gamma. So this is another thing, too, that you kind of have to think about is like, okay, it's really strong in the OCG, but their list is really different from ours, and we also have cards like Gamma still at 3 that we can just use against this. So it's another card that's still going to be really impactful when it comes to this deck. The other thing too is going to be talking about the spell cards. So the one on the left here is the Splight Starter. The one on the right is going to be the Smasher. The Starter allows you to special summon a Splight from the deck, and then you take life points equal to its attack points. The other one here is going to allow you to banish a Splight card from the graveyard, and then you can go ahead and activate the effect to non-targeting, banish a Splight card you control, and banish a card your opponent controls, which is really insane, and it's just essentially Mirror Jade in spell form, which is always okay with me, you know? So, a really cool card, still just going to be a one-of, but it's still really impactful, because again, it's hyper-searchable, and that's something that is just really nice to have in the package here. Now, this deck is Toad Turbo. I really do feel like this is going to be the best variant. I really personally don't like the Live Twin variant. I don't think that it's going to be as explosive. I think this one just has a lot of playability. There's a lot of reasons for that, though, and we'll be talking about that here in the next slide or two. I think that this is really cool, though, again, just because you get to utilize things like the Swap Frog, and you get to even play around things like Imperm really well. If you've played things like Paleo before, you know that you can normal summon Swap Frog, and if they choose to go ahead and imperm it, which they may or may not, then you can go ahead and put it back in your hand for cost. Then you can go ahead and special summon it from your hand and then pitch one from your deck to the grave, and you immediately have Toad access, which is really cool. And again, that's going to be something that a lot of people will find out moving forward. I played Paleo before, so I know how this works. You know, it was just always really fun just baiting the Swap Frog. But this deck is going to play a little different, but I'm still really excited for this variant. I think it's going to be the best one. The other thing is that you can essentially search a Handtrap, which is pretty cool. You can go ahead and special summon like an Ash Blossom off of Hulk. And since the Swap Frog just says return a monster on your field to the hand cost, you can special Ash and then Swap Frog return Ash to your hand. So therefore in the OCG, they're searching Max C. So again, this deck is not going to be tier 0. It's just in the OCG, they don't have things like Gamma. They can search Max C. And ours alone, though, I think that it's going to be a really good deck. But at the same time, it's not going to be like the most dominant deck that we see here. Still really good, though. Now, is going second better? So this is the reason why I say is another big thing when it comes to is this deck tier 0. And most tier 0 decks, it don't just lose to like one interruption. If you Dark Ruler the going second board of Splight, they actually just lose. It's kind of wild because even on the big board of like Double Toad, Gigantic, Elf, and like even if you have like Smasher face down, like one Dark Ruler just kills the whole board. And it's something that we really have to think about siding for, like maybe a Point of the Red Lotus or what have you, because there's a lot of situations where if you are going second, even a lot of my friends in the OCG said, if you end up going second, it's a lot easier to play against the deck, which after a lot of hours of playtesting, I can see why. Moving on though, a lot of people have been seeing a lot of hype out of Exosister, and a lot of people are now asking like, hey, is this deck good? Are we buying this deck out? Is it going to be really solid? I really don't think so. I think that it's only really good right now because the meta over there is predominantly Splight. And so when one deck that utilizes its graves so much is predominantly the best deck, you play a deck that says you cannot interact with your graveyard, it's going to be really great. And again, the only reason this deck is doing really good is because they're under the assumption if they go to a regional, 9 out of 9 rounds is going to be Splight right now. So you kind of have to say like, oh, if I play a deck that counters that, it's probably going to be really good. It's just a meta call. I would not call it a good deck right now. It's just, it needs more. It just needs so much more. They went in the right direction, though, with the new card, because that card says if a card is moved out of the graveyard, which is what they all should have said. But at the same time, and the other one's saying that it needs your opponent to move a card out of the graveyard, it's way too reliant on your opponent at the moment. So for that, I would say the deck still isn't really that good. But in the OCG at the current moment, yes, it is a very good meta call. So that's why we're seeing a lot of usage out of this deck in the OCG, but don't just start spam buying this deck yet, because I don't think that we'll see a format anytime soon where this deck will really be that effective. Moving on though, this is my list for Splight Frogs. Again, this is something that I have been testing for multiple hours, and this is something that I just feel like is going to be roughly one of the best lists that we have for this. I really do enjoy this list though. You'll see some people who run like 1 red and 1 of the carrot. I personally think that running 2 and 2 is fine. I still want to see these in my opening hand as much as possible to be able to play around different hand traps, which I think is fine. I also run cross out because in the mirror match, especially if you're playing against a lot of mirror matches, right, cross out becomes insane. And it's another one of those things too where like you kind of have to just consider if you're already running a lot of hand traps and you already know the deck isn't really going to lose to hand traps, but if you can like cross out like an ogre here or like an imperm there, that's pretty good. I'm still a big fan of that, so that's why we had like the 3 cross out and the 1 call by. I play a higher frog count. You'll see a lot of people only playing like the 3 swap and the 1 Ronin, but I think playing the extra Ronin and the Dew Frog really does go a long way. We're also playing the Diva package because it's an instant link too, or if you really need to, you can go right into the Gigantic as well. So I really like the list so far. I think that it's been overperforming just in testing, especially like Prosperity. Like your extra deck's pretty loose, so it doesn't really matter too much. I like this card right here a lot. This card is essentially just Sky Striker Zeke, where it just allows you to detach one and then banish a monster your opponent controls until the end of their turn. So again, it's essentially just Zeke, which is pretty cool. The extra deck, it's pretty loose for the most part. I just play like the Nightmares because I think it's just fine for now. And then also like if you can play dark, you probably should. Jet and Blue are both darks, so like there's no point not to run it. But I do hope that you enjoyed this today because there's a lot of information that is always just kind of like tossed around, and we're always just saying like, oh, this could be the best deck. Is it the best deck? Like, is this a good counter for this? What will it do in the TCG? And these are the questions that I hope to just answer right away for you all, because I don't really want the confusion to be there and be like, do we have to panic buy this? Do we have to panic buy this? Like, is this going to be like so insane that I need to like put money aside to like buy this when it like first comes out? Like, we need this. So there's a lot of different questions out there, and if you ever have more of them, definitely feel free to comment them down below. But a lot of times all it really takes is some play testing on a deck like this to really be able to determine how crazy it will be, because even in the scope of the format that we're going to be getting into, you got to realize that it's going to be way different, and we could even have another deck that is just absolutely absurd because of an unban of a card, because of a ban of another card that allows another deck to play again, right? Like we saw that with Drytron when Protoss got banned. They just started coming back into the meta. And so if they unban one random card, it could just spark another deck. So you never really know. If you enjoyed your time today, definitely go ahead and join my community, Discord, Twitch, Twitter. And then if you want a coaching session at Metafy, definitely go over there and check it out. If you have any questions, definitely PM me on Discord. All the links are in the description below. And I hope that everyone has a great night. Thank you.